Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Steve Reifman, or Mr. Reifman if you're from Roosevelt School, where I teach in Santa Monica. I'm so happy that you are joining me today. I'm so excited to start this 6-session series on Zoom. And I wanted to start by telling you something that you already know. This summer is already looking like it's going to be very different from any other summer that we've ever had. Usually during the summer, you would wake up in the morning and you might have a big smile on your face because you're looking forward to going to camp or going to some kind of class or some kind of enrichment opportunity. And we may or may not have all of those. So my purpose today is to encourage you to find something this summer that will still put that same smile on your face so that you are excited throughout the year, throughout the summer. I'll be talking to you about writing, and maybe what excites you is doing your own writing project, but maybe it's something different. Maybe there's something else that you're excited about that you want to do. Maybe it's coding, maybe it's something to do with art or music or science or sports or reading. And it's all good because whatever you're passionate about, that is great. The key is to find your passion and then go for it. So today I'm going to talk to you about a passion project that I started many years ago. And some of it will be familiar to you if I know you, but most of it will be brand new to you. And I'm excited to share with you. My story starts about 15 years ago. And every Monday night, I would go to my friend's house and we would watch a TV show. And it's not great to watch too much TV, but every once in a while, a TV show can be a lot of fun. And the TV show is called 24. It's not a show for kids. It's a show for adults because there's some violence in it. And I'm certainly not recommending that to you. When you get older, you might want to check it out. But the reason the show was so exciting is that it was in what's called real time. An hour of the show was a real hour. So when I would turn on the show on Monday night with my friends, it would say, this episode takes place between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. And the hour of TV that we watched was a real hour. And then the next week, this episode takes place between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. So one episode, 1 hour would follow the other. And if you put together all 24 episodes between January and May, it was one day. And that was hard to remember because the show took place over many months, but it fits together to make one day. And it was so exciting. My friends and I had a rule. We weren't allowed to talk during the show. If we wanted to ask each other about our day or talk about our lives, it would have to be during the commercials because the action was so fast. It was so fascinating that we had to watch every second with our full attention. And after watching for a few years, I said to myself, you know what? Someone should really do something like this for kids because the idea of a show that takes place in one day in real time is absolutely riveting, but nobody was doing that. So then a couple of years later, I had that same thought, somebody should really do a project for kids that took place in one day in real time, and nobody was. So after a while, I started thinking, you know what? Maybe I should be the person to do a project that takes place in one day in real time. So at first I thought of doing a movie or a TV show, and my code name for the project was 6, because in my mind it would take place in a school day, which is around 6 hours. But then I thought, you know what? I don't really have any background or real interest in doing a movie or a TV show. I'm a teacher. I'm around books all day. Why don't I try to do a kid's book that would take place in a school in one day in real time? And I got very excited about that. But then something happened to me that I think has either happened to you or it will happen to you when there's something that you decide that you want to do. It's easy to have doubt. It's easy to say, you know what? I'm not sure if I should do this. People might not like it. It could be hard. A lot could go wrong. Maybe I'll embarrass myself. Maybe I just won't try. And it's always easier in life to say no to things than it is to say yes to things. So one of the main things I want to do today is to encourage you to say yes to any project you have, because no matter what happens, if you say yes, it's going to turn out better than if you say no. Because if you say no to yourself, you might end up regretting it and wondering what would have happened if you tried. That's not a good feeling. You don't want to look back on your life and say, oh, gee, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have done that. It's better just to go for it. So I decided I was going to write a mystery book because as a kid, I loved mysteries. I was going to write a mystery book for kids. When I was a kid, I loved the Encyclopedia Brown books. I'm not sure if you've read any of those, but each Encyclopedia Brown book has about 10 short mysteries. And in each one, there's one clue, and you either find it and solve the mystery when you turn to the end to see what the solution is, or you don't. And in all my years of reading Encyclopedia Brown books, I never found I never solved any of them. And looking back on it now, I'm not sure if I should be a little worried about myself because after reading 15 of those books, that's 150 stories and I couldn't solve any of them. But I think I turned out okay, so I'm not too worried. But because I love mysteries, I decided I was going to do one. The only thing is I need a little help. I wasn't sure exactly how to start. So a long time ago on the 3rd Street Promenade, where I'm sure many of you have been, there used to be a bookstore called Borders. So I walked to Borders one day looking for a book that would teach me how to write a mystery. So I walked in, I asked the nice lady at the desk, excuse me, where would I go to find books on writing? Because I want to find out how to write a mystery. So she pointed me to the right floor. She pointed me to the section. I start looking around and look what I found. Exactly what I needed. It's like it was calling my name out in front of that bookstore. How to write a mystery. So I bought it, I took it home, and then every time I had free time, I read it cover to cover with such excitement. I was so hungry to read it and find information for the book that I wanted to write. So this is the book that I read called How to Write a Mystery. And then when I was reading it, something really cool happened. I already knew most of the things in it. And then I realized maybe I shouldn't doubt myself. Maybe I shouldn't wonder if I could do this. I know the show 24. I know how kids act. I know how kids talk. I'm around kids every day. I've been teaching for 26 years now. Maybe I'm just the right person to write this mystery. So I started feeling really good about this. I started feeling very confident. So many of you know, next to Menchie's across from Roosevelt School, there's a pharmacy. So one day I was watching 2 football playoff games, and there was a big break between the first game and the second game. So I decided to walk down the street to the pharmacy to buy a writing notebook, which I'm holding up now. I'm sure many of you have these in your class. If you have a writer's workshop, you keep some kind of notebook or journal. If you have one, you want to use it this summer, it would be great. So I decided I was going to start taking notes for the new mystery book that I wanted to write. And I don't know why, but the name Chase popped into my head. I was going to name the main character of the book Chase Matthews. And then my nieces, who were really young at the time, they said, Uncle Steve, there's a Nickelodeon television show, and there's a character already named Chase Matthews. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. I don't think I can name my character Chase Matthews. But I like the name Chase, and I like the last name having 2 syllables and starting with an M. So I was having dinner with my parents one night. My mom's like, you're a huge football fan. You love Peyton Manning. You love Eli Manning. Why didn't you call him Chase Manning? And I was like, Mom, that is a great idea. So Chase Matthews became Chase Manning, and that's been his name ever since. So then after I figured that out, I opened to the first page of my journal, and I started taking notes. Here's the code name for my project, 6, because the school day is about 6 hours. And then I started coming up with names. At first, it was going to be Schoolhouse Mystery Number 1. I was already thinking it was going to be a series, but then I didn't like that name at all. So then I came up with all these names that have the word chase in it. Chase Against Time, which became the first book, which I have right here I can show you. I have a lot of things I want to show you today. So that became Chase Against Time, which I'm going to show you a lot of information about today. Cut to the Chase, which I never used. The Chase is On, I never used. Back on the Chase, didn't use because I wanted Chase to be the first name. So I came up with Chase for Home, which became the second book right here in green. Chase Under Pressure, which became the third book. Chase Under Fire, I never used. Chase for the Gold, I never used. And then The Thrill of the Chase, Chase Against the Clock, didn't use those. So then after that, I started writing ideas for my book. And I tried to be very open-minded because when you're brainstorming, you don't want to judge too harshly and cross out things that you might like later on. I know this is very small, so forgive me if you can't see. I'll read to you anything that's important. So I started writing down ideas, and it's pretty cool how many of them ended up in the actual book. So I said that all the books are going to take place in a school in one day. It's going to be action-packed, time's ticking, it's going to be unpredictable, and it's always going to be about how honesty defeats dishonesty. And then I wrote down that the book's going to take place on the day of the big dinner that the school has, because many schools have a big dinner that's a fundraiser to raise money for the school. Then I'm turning to the next page. I actually started writing dialogue. This is what the principal says to Chase after he discovers something was missing. He says, I have reason to believe it's 1 of 3 students. And that actually ended up in the book pretty much word for word. So then once I started coming up with ideas, I needed to figure out what the crime would be. In real life, crime is a bad thing, and hopefully it never happens, because that means somebody's getting hurt, something's getting damaged or destroyed, and we don't want that. It's very negative. But in a mystery, you have to have a crime. And in my mind, a crime had to be what's called a good crime, good for a mystery, not good in real life. The first thing the crime had to be was fixable. As a teacher of kids, I want to be very responsible in what I write. I want to be a good role model. So I wanted a crime where everything would be good as new at the end of the story. And if you think about it, there are very few crimes that are completely fixable. And here's a chance where you could use the chat. If you can come up with any idea of a type of crime that is completely fixable, so at the end of the book, things are as good as new compared to how they were at the beginning, please let me know. Because in my mind, there's only one type of fixable crime, and that is a theft. That means something gets stolen. And Michaela, good job. Michaela just texted that to me. She and I are on the same page today. For example, somebody once said, well, what if somebody damages somebody's car and they take the air out of the tires? You could go to the tire store and get a new tire. Things would be good as new. The tire would still work. Well, yeah, the tire would work, but you still have to pay money to the tire store. So you're still worse off than you were before. So that's not completely fixable. So I thought something could get stolen. And then at the end of the book, it could be found and everything else would be just fine. The other thing a crime has to be is important. It's got to be something that readers would care about. Here's an example. If you want to close your eyes and visualize with me, you're welcome to do that. Let's pretend it's Monday morning and you're in class and you're sitting at your desk doing math. You got math paper in front of you, you have your pencil in your hand, and you got one of those rectangular pink erasers next to you. Let's pretend that you need to go up to the counter in the back of the room to get a tissue. You go get your tissue, you come back, your paper's still there, your pencil's still there, but the eraser's gone. Let's pretend that somebody took it. That isn't good. However, I don't think that's very important. I don't think any of you would ever go running home to your parents and say, Mom, Dad, you have to buy me this mystery book. It's about a little pink eraser that gets stolen. I just don't think that would ever happen. So I started thinking, okay, I know in my book I want something to get stolen, but I'm not sure what it is. So I started thinking about different things that happen at my school, maybe your school too. So I'm thinking sports. We have after school sports. We have PE. It could be something related to sports. Then I'm thinking music. At our school, and I know at all the schools in Santa Monica, there's an amazing music program that not many schools in other places have. So I started thinking, what if? And what if is a really good question when you're writing something, because it keeps making things bigger and more important. It keeps raising the stakes. So I said, what if the music program at the school was so good they had an orchestra? It was going to be a fifth grade orchestra originally. What if that orchestra wins the state championship every year? And then what if the school was in a very difficult situation? They were going to run out of money for the next year, and they were going to have to cut the music program. That would be a huge deal. People would care about that. And then what if the local adult orchestra in town donated a beautiful handcrafted cello to the school? And if the school could sell it at the auction at the dinner that night for enough money, that would save the music program. But if they don't, then the music program would be cut. That I thought was exciting. And then what if the cello was on display at school the day of the auction to build interest and get attention for it, and somebody stole it? That I thought was a winner of an idea, because people would care about that and they'd be very upset if it was stolen. So I told you originally it was going to be a fifth grade orchestra, because one thing I learned is that if I wanted fifth and sixth graders to read the book, the main character needed to be a fifth grader or a sixth grader, because older kids tend not to read down about lower grades, but lower grade kids would like to read up for upper grades. I didn't know that. So Chase went from being a fourth grader to a fifth grader. So everything now is about him being in fifth grade, and the orchestra is going to take place next year in sixth grade. So I thought that was a really good idea. I came up with a crime. I came up with my main character, Chase. Then I needed some kind of connection. How is Chase involved in this? It's got to be a really strong personal connection. So I'm thinking, okay, what if he has an older brother or an older sister who were in the orchestra and they won state championships? And he's been dreaming since he was a little kindergartner about being in that orchestra so that he could win. And then what if he was going to be in the orchestra next year right before the cello got stolen? That would be a big deal. I think that would be very dramatic. So I went on to do a lot of note taking. And then a couple things I want to share with you. First, you'll notice I crossed out a lot of things. It either means I didn't like it or I put it in the book and then I crossed it out to show that I've already done it. It's my way of keeping track. And then I did my first timeline. When you write a mystery and most other types of stories, not only do you need a lot of suspects, and I had a lot of suspects in mine, I didn't want there to be one suspect. I don't know about you, but I once read a book where there was one suspect. Obviously, that person did it because it couldn't have been anybody else. And I want to keep you guessing. I'm a nice person. I'm friendly. If you want to hang out at the end of the call and chat with me, I'd love to do that. But in a mystery book, I'm trying to mess with you. I'm trying to keep the real clues away from you, and I'm trying to help you focus on the wrong clues. They're called red herrings. I want you to pay attention to the things. Some of you are making a great face at me right now. I love it. I'm not being mean. I'm just messing with you as a writer because I don't want you to figure out the mystery. I'm trying to keep you in suspense. So I realized that in schools, you have teachers, you have kids, you have custodians, you have administrators, you have coaches, you have office workers, you have librarians. There's a lot of people who could have done it. So I wanted about 5 or 6 people that could have done it. And then I need to figure out what are their reasons why they could have stolen the cello, what are their motives, and what are the clues. And one thing I've learned as a teacher is the kids are really smart. If the timeline doesn't work, if something doesn't make sense, I'm going to lose the reader. They're going to put the book away and they're going to pick up another one instead, and I don't want that. So at this time, I was trying to come up with who the characters were, why they could have done it, and how to fit it all together into a timeline. Not only that, I want to show you this. If you were in my class last year and you remember the thinking work that we did with the character relationship chart where we show which characters are friends, which are strangers, and which don't really like each other, that's what I did for the characters in Chase Against Time. There's the music teacher, there's Chase's teacher, Mrs. Kennedy, principal, Amy Simmons, Brock, Dave Morrison, PE coach, his wife. His wife never made it into the book, but I think he talked to her a little bit in the first book. So I needed to make interesting connections and relationships in the book that were different. By this point, I was feeling really good about this story, and my goal was not just to do it. I wanted to make the most exciting mystery book that kids would ever read. My hopes were very high. I teach my students to have high expectations, and I had them for myself. And then something really cool happened while I was doing this. There would be times when I would be at school teaching, and I would do my job, and I would focus on my job, but all I wanted to do was go home and write. And that had never happened before. It was brand new to me, and I loved it. There was a time I was in the supermarket pushing the cart, and I had an idea for the book, and I used to think that I'd remember when I got home, but I've learned that I'm not going to. So if you're writing something, you have an idea, don't think you're going to remember it an hour later. Write it down or dictate it immediately so that you have it forever. There was also a time at the gym I was lifting weights and getting all pumped up, and I had an idea, and I was thinking, maybe I'll remember it. But I said, no. So I went to get a pencil. I went to get a little piece of paper. I stepped off to the side of the gym, and I wrote down my idea. I folded up. I put it in my sock. It was totally safe. And then I took it home, and I wrote it down. And then one night, I'll never forget it, even though this is like 15 years ago. I was out to dinner with some friends, and I got home late. This is like 10:30 at night. And I was standing at my kitchen, which is 3 feet away, and I had an idea. And I said, okay, I'm not going to lose this idea. I'm going to write it down. So it's 10:30. I'm writing my idea down. I look up at the clock, and it's 11:30. I was writing for an hour, and I didn't even realize it. And that's what happens when you're doing something that you love. Time flies by. You're not distracted by anything. You're not looking at your phone. You're not looking at your device. You are 100% immersed in what you're doing. And that's what I'm hoping to encourage you to do today, whether it's something about writing or, again, sports, music, art, whatever it is. By the way, I will remind you that if you do have any questions, please understand I'll be taking questions at the end via the chat. So please remember that. So after I started taking my notes, I got to the point where I realized that I had enough for a full story. But if you look through all these pages, they're all mixed together. On one page, there could be something from chapter 10. On another page, there could be something from chapter 2. On the next page, it could be back to chapter 19. It was all mixed up. So I needed to make something called an outline. And if maybe you've done that in your class if you're of a certain age. So this outline is really special to me. This is the original outline that I typed over 15 years ago. I decided that since my favorite show was 24 and it inspired me to write this book, I was going to have 24 chapters. And I got really lucky because 24 was the perfect number. because in a 5.5 hour school day, each chapter ended up being about 10 to 15 minutes, which was perfect. And we'll talk about more about how to divide your book into chapters in a later session. So you'll stay tuned for that one. So each page of my outline was, each chapter was 1 page. And I knew right away I did not want chapter titles. Every chapter is going to start with the time, just like the TV show 24 did, and it was going to end with the time. Sometimes I've seen kids' books where they give a chapter title and they give away what's going to happen in the book. Like the chapter will be The Big Surprise. Well, then you start the chapter and you know there's going to be a big surprise. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be completely secret until you started reading it. So it's just the time at the beginning and then time at the end. After I did the chapter outline, 24 chapters, the next day I started drafting, and I was sitting in the very chair at the very table that I'm at now. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm somebody known as a perfectionist. Some of you might be the same, where you want things to be exactly perfect. You want them to be exactly the way they are. And if they're not, you freak out a little bit. And I've gotten better about that. Hopefully you don't freak out too much. But I remember thinking that to turn my first chapter page into an actual chapter was going to take me 3 hours. And I thought I was going to read it over and not like it at all. It turned out it took me about an hour. And then after I wrote it, I read it again from scratch like I'd never seen it before. I took a deep breath. I was very calm and I said, cool. It was exactly the way that I wanted. It was very reassuring and my confidence was very high. So I turned out I did 3 chapters that day. And you can do the math. If I have 24 chapters in the book and I'm doing 3 chapters per day, it took 8 days to draft it after I had taken the notes, which took a few months, and to do the outline, which also took a few weeks. So then after I wrote it, I wanted to read it to somebody. I wanted someone to read it. So then I realized I'm a teacher. I taught 3rd grade at the time. We have read aloud every day. I'm going to take this into my class and read it out loud to them. But I'm not going to tell them that I wrote it because kids are very nice. And if I tell them that I wrote it, they're going to tell me all these nice things about it, even if they didn't really love the book. So I said, I just held up, not these pages, but the draft pages. They were just pages out of a printer. I said, friends, I have this new book. Just got a copy of it. It hasn't come out yet. I'd like to read it to you. So then I read it to them. And they reacted exactly the way that I wanted them to. They fell for all the false clues that I loaded the book with, and they didn't quite see the real clues that I put in. There was even a rumor that started that one of the kids in the class wrote the book. And I was so happy to hear that because I totally wanted everybody to believe that. Because if they thought that one of the kids in the class wrote it, then they wouldn't think I did it, and I could keep my secret. By the way, can all of you just give me a thumbs up if you could hear me okay? We're doing a little audio check. Awesome. So after I read it to my students, several things happened, but it eventually became the book known as Chase Against Time. And I have to tell you, when you see your ideas put into an actual book with a cover, it is an amazing feeling. And if you are an author and want to become one, just know that your hard work is going to be worth it, because when you see it finished, it doesn't matter how many people read it. I didn't do this to become rich. I didn't do this to become famous, and I haven't become either. I did it mostly for fun. I did it for the challenge of it. And what started out as something that I just wanted to see if I could do has become one of the most fun, important parts of my life. And again, I strongly encourage you to do something that could bring you that same type of joy. So after doing this, I want to do it again, because when something feels good, you want to keep doing it. So I'm realizing that this book was about music. So I wanted to do another one where Chase was a 5th grader. But instead of being about music, I wanted to be about sports, because I'm a huge sports fan. It was my favorite thing as a kid, and it's still my favorite thing now. So the second book was going to be about sports. Chase ends up joining the baseball team. He's not very good. He swings and misses a lot. They call him an air conditioner because all he does is make a breeze for people, because he's certainly not hitting the ball. But then he gets a lucky batting glove from his grandfather. It leads him to become a great hitter. And then wouldn't you know it, the batting glove gets stolen and he has to find it. So in the first book, the cello gets stolen, and that's important to everybody. But in the second one, his batting glove gets stolen. That's a little more personal to him and to the baseball team. So I thought that'd be a nice change of pace. Now, I love all 5 of them the same, but I have to be honest and tell you that my favorite one is the third one, because this was about a hamster race, and it was kind of fun writing about a little hamster because I've never had one of my own. there's a big hamster race and Chase is on the school science club, and wouldn't you know it, the hamster gets stolen. And don't worry, no harm came to the actual hamster. He's fine, or she's fine. He's fine. But I honestly can't remember. I think it's a he. It's hamster's named Dash because it's a fast hamster. And then I also wanted the next one to take place during Chase's 5th grade year. So it's going to take place on the last day of school. His teacher was going to retire, and she got a very generous retirement gift. And wouldn't you know that her retirement gift gets stolen in number 4. And then the series ended last fall with this one. It took place during the summer. I thought that after 4 in a row that take place in a school, that would be fun to have one that takes place during the summer, different place. I had to learn about the layout of a camp because it was different from the school. So that was a fun challenge as well. So the series is over, but again, want to tell you how much fun it has been to write it and share it with kids. And sometimes I'll see kids in the hallway who tell me that they've read it and we talk about it. And it's really a fun thing. So during the summer, if you haven't figured out something that you're going to love to do, I encourage you to find it, whether it's writing or something else. That way, even if you might not go to your same camp or other classes, you still have something that you will enjoy. I also want to tell you that starting a few days ago, I had my first idea for a book that wasn't a Chase Manning book. And I started drafting it today, finished chapter 4, and I'm so excited about it. I think there's a sentence in chapter 4 that's the funniest sentence I've ever written. I honestly, forgive me if this sounds terrible, but I had to stop for a couple minutes because I couldn't stop laughing. I was like cracking up when I was reading it over and over again, and I had to take a little break. I took a walk, I collected myself, and then I came back and I finished chapter 4. But it just shows you how much fun something can be when you really get into it and you put your heart and soul into it. Throughout the series, because I'm about to end our first session and take your questions, but during the rest of the series, we're going to talk about projects that you might want to do. This Thursday, I'll talk to you about step-by-step how you can start your own writing project from the very beginning. And then the next 4 sessions will focus on different writing skills that you want to develop as you get older so that you can be a better writer and have more fun with it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then I'm going to read your questions. And then if you want to hang out after for a minute and talk to me voice to voice, I would be more than happy to do that. So hang on.